L'chaim, to life. L'chaim, v'librocha, to life and blessings. Ah, life and the blessings in life can be perceived in different manners. Jewish teachings can be understood and perceived in different ways. We can perceive, ooh, excuse me a second. We can perceive life in different ways. The philosophers of Jewish teachings perceive life in one manner. The Pashtonim, the ones who understand things or teach things in the simplistic manner, simplistic meaning not not like in a foolish, simple way, no, but simplistic in a more literal way, will perceive life in a different manner. And yet the Kabbalists, they will perceive things in an altogether different manner. How do you perceive life? What's your perspective? Welcome to Tanya today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad, Zichron Kadesh in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Yesterday, I shared the Tanya in New York on the way to the Ohel of the Rebbe, where I stood for 3.5 hours to get a minute of time at the Ohel, the gravesite of the Rebbe. There were thousands upon thousands of people there. Many, mostly were young people, actually. It was beautiful. It was amazing. I wouldn't call it, it's not there for an experience. It's there for the connection. Hopefully we take back that connection and deepen it, connection to the Rebbe, which gives us a greater connection to our authentic selves and to God Almighty. So we continue. We are in chapter 10 in Tanya, in Shayich Ve'emunah, in understanding the power of Creator within creation. How do we perceive that? How do we understand God as Creator? So there's different ways. There's the Pashtanim, the simplistic, literal way that we can understand God as Creator. There is the way philosophers would look at the power of Creator within creation. And then there's the Kabbalists. So the literalists, well, we'll just say God spoke, and without giving, great understanding, because it would be from an infinite God, he creates a finite world. And that's something beyond us. The philosophers of Jewish teachings, they would look at it in a term called shefa. Shefa means a flow, a divine flow. Divine flow means God has a divine flow of kindness, divine flow of divine intelligence that comes from the giver to the recipient. Like from this cup you take and you pour into, from this cup you pour into something else that now gives it its its energy, its power, its vitality. So what's being given is from the core itself, the thing itself, right? There's an effort that's involved. It's not automatic, right? When you're giving a flow. That's the way philosophy would look at God, his power within creation. The Kabbalists came around and said, there's a better metaphor to use. I mean, this is all trying to bring to us in a way that we can better understand the God within creation, which is important because after all, we need to know God, not just believe in God, we need to know him. So the Kabbalists use a different term, and that's or, light. They don't use the shefa because the metaphor is lacking because when you pour from this water into something else, you're lacking something from the original. Not only that, there's an effort that's involved. It's not, you know, it's not sort of, so to speak, automatic, if you will, right? But light, well, when the sun gives off and emerges from the sunlight, nothing is lost from it. It doesn't become a smaller entity because the ray of light has left the sun, right? So, and also the sun is effortlessly allowing, or not allowing, or the sun is effortlessly emitting light, whereas here there's an effort to give a flow, that the flow should go from, from God into creation. And as a result, there's that effort. And from the sun, there's nothing that is lacking from it because emitted from it is a ray of light from the sun. Likewise, God, there's nothing lacking in him because there emerges from him creation. Furthermore, the ray of light of the sun, right, is ultimately, part of the sun. So what is that metaphor? God creates through his light, the light being the divine attributes. See, the light, a ray of light that emerges from the sun is now a particular, right? It is relative to the sun. I mean, the sun is also a physical and limited creation, as everything is, but relatively speaking, it's like, infinitely greater. Again, it's not infinitely greater because it's not infinite. But metaphorically, and we're using for a metaphor, remember, because why are we using a metaphor? Is because we want to be able to understand, to know as best as we can the way of God within creation. So the metaphor of light is that it emerges, right, and doesn't take away anything from the sun, as nothing is taken away from God when he creates the world. That ray is a limited, and that ray represents one of the attributes of God. 10 attributes, 3 intellectual, 7 emotional, right? The metaphor of God's kindness, his intelligence, right? So that radiation that shines forth is called light, as God called it. That light should be called day. But now, from our perception, we don't even see it as a ray of light coming from the sun that emits from the sun because, when we have a sunny day, we know where that ray of light that took 8 minutes to come down to earth, where it comes from. It's very obvious to us. Not so in creation, though. So we don't even see the ray of light of God as that it emerges from this world. We feel our separateness and that the world instinctually we feel that we are, not because we came from somewhere. We know that, but we don't inherently feel that. We don't inherently experience that. However, from God's perspective, right? How is that ray of light? In what manner is that ray of light? That ray of light is as it is within the sun, totally united and one with its source. As we explained previously, and now we're just giving it the metaphor to better understand the terminology we used before, we spoke that God is infinitely removed from that ray of light. As the sun, in a sense, you could say, right? In a sense, not infinitely, but it is greatly removed, right? Proof is that it emits from it and doesn't lack anything because that ray of light came out of it, emerged from it. God is infinitely removed from his divine attributes, and yet he's totally one with them, which is something beyond our comprehension. And that's why now we're getting a metaphor to better understand. That ray of light is an attribute of God. It's a quality one. The 10 qualities or 10 attributes of the divine. Again, 3 intellectual, Chabad, and 7 emotional. They are, from God's perspective, totally one with him. And what's the metaphor? The ray of light, the way it is within the sun. Absolute perfect unity in the orb of the sun. Right? And in the orb of the sun, we wouldn't say that there's 2 things there. There's the sun and the ray of light. No, in the orb of the sun, there's only one thing, the orb of the sun. And that ray of sun we don't call it a ray of sun within the sun. It's the sun, period. And that's how God is totally bound up with his attributes, with his wisdom, with his will. It's bound in perfect unity with the essence of him. The essence of him. That's today's class. Any questions? So today's class was just to bring us that metaphor that we can appreciate and to understand the concept of light, the Kabbalistic understanding on how we perceive everything is the light of God. We could call it the power of God. We call it the vitality of God. We could call it the flow from God. Right? Kabbalists call it the light because it's not a perfect metaphor because the light that emerges from the sun, right, is automatic. God, the light that emerges from him is not automatic. It's by the will of God. So Even this metaphor has a drawback to it, but it's a better metaphor than the flow or energy. It's the best metaphor we have. John. So the 10 utterances are only from our perspective, while God's prepares everything is subsumed in his absolute unity. Yes, we're going to get there. We didn't get there yet, but the 10 utterances, we're going to get there soon. And it's actually the next chapter. Yeah. 10 utterances, chapter 11. So we'll get there, but it's correct what you're saying. Anybody else with a question? Laurie has a question. Is this why we have different names for Hashem? Yes, the names are based on attributes. So Elohim is justice, Kel is chesed, kindness. Havaya is usually compassion. It's usually compassion, although it can be in a different manner, but it's usually compassion. But that's why we have different names. The different names are, if you will, the different lights as they, and our perception, are perceived, a different light, a different life, a different energy from God, a different flow as a result. And we're going to actually understand that a little more in the next couple of classes on how that light, which is called the divine attribute of God, is apparent within the act of creation. So we'll get there. Yeah, we're in the middle of a thought. Yes, our galaxy is unstable. All of creation is unstable because God has to put his effort every moment, right? And that's the light that we're talking about, that God is every moment bringing into the light of God that is creating something from nothing. All right. That light is constantly being infused in creation. Now, the point over here is that light that we're talking about, visually, we would think of it as it emits itself from the sun, as the sunlight gives us life in a physical sense. And that's how we would perceive it from God, that the light of God is emitted from him to give us life. And the point that we're making over here, and the unity that there is with God, is much more profound, that light that is so-called emitted from God to create and to be vested within me and within everything in creation is really one with the sun globe itself, one with God himself. And again, it's hard to fathom that exactly. That's why we need the metaphor of the sun ray within the sun globe. All right. I hope that was clear. Amazing. Actually, you're all amazing. You're still here. You're still learning. Still learning. Although it is somewhat abstract. And, this is on social media. And what we're learning over here is like, see other things on social media where there's so many people following and it's very entertaining. And this is not so entertaining. Maybe that's my, drawback. But the content is profound. And if we really want to be authentic and true to ourselves, then we owe it to ourselves to learn as you're doing, coming day in, day out. And I'm very inspired by you, that there's a lot of other things you could follow on social media that'll be a lot more tantalizing, a lot more, feeling, feeling the love, feeling the warmth, feeling the smile, the laughter. And you're here. That's amazing. You're here day in, day out. That's a real testament. Now, I must say, it's not so many that are here. We have throughout the day about 100 people or so, maybe a little more than that. I'm not exactly certain, that are engaged, as opposed to hundreds and thousands and millions of clicks that others get. But that doesn't change anybody, really. I've watched those things. They're inspiring, but there's no perspiration in it because there's no effort. It's just sit back and be entertained. Here, you got to lean forward, as I am. I lean forward because I need to be engaged, need to be focused, need to give of myself by focusing on the teachings. And that's an effort, especially because what we're learning is somewhat abstract. The power of the creator within creation, yeah, not so simple and easy. So I want to thank you for that inspires me. Now, if we could just, if you can all try to inspire another person that they should come and learn with us, then, we can make things grow. And whoever has anything to help in that way, please let me know, especially if you have a knack in social media in any manner, whether it's the aspect of what the content that's put out and how to put it out into and other manners, taking portions of what's said every day, or just in general having something. Let me know. Contact me, because again, definitely, this is definitely worthy of more engagement. Yesterday at the oil, someone came up to me and thanking me that their journey, the Tanya class, has helped tremendously. All right, folks. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadesh in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Thank you for joining. Have an amazing day.